All right, here we go. Let's finish up with what we should have finished yesterday, but we just ran out of time. So yesterday what did we do? We solved the quadratic equation by factoring. Today we're going to do a thing called the square root method. Write that down. The square root method. All right, I'm going to start off right with an example. Example A. So x squared. I'm just going to put some letter. They use the letter P, so we'll use that letter as well. So what you're going to do, it says to solve, but you don't really know which one to solve for. Well, P is already solved for, but we're going to solve for x. All right, so that's basically what we usually solve for. We're going to solve for x. So is x by itself? Do I have one x sitting there by itself? No. So I need to get an x by itself. What's making this x not just an x by itself? The exponent, the squared. Okay? Now, how do we get rid of something? Let's go back in time a little bit. What if something was being added to x? How would we get rid of it? We'd subtract, right? What if something is being subtracted from the x? How would we get rid of it? We would add. So basically, what do? We always do the what? The opposite, okay? What's the opposite of squaring something? Taking the square root. And that's going to get rid of a square root. For instance, if I had this, you don't need to write this down, but if I had 3 squared and I wanted to get rid of that square, how could I do that? I could take the square root. Because, look what happens. What is 3 squared? It's 9. What is the square root of 9? It's 3, okay? You're going to find out in a minute here that it's more than just 3, but it is a 3. So look what we did. We got rid of that square, didn't we? By doing what to it? Taking the square root. So how do I just get x by itself? Like I got that 3 by itself by taking the square root. So I'm not going to square it. I'm going to square root it. So I'll tell you what. I'm just going to rewrite this so we can see the original problem. So watch. I'm going to square root that. Now in algebra, we've done this before. If you do something on the left side, talk to me. We do to the right side as well. So if I square root the left side, I also square root the right side. Now, why in the world did I take the square root? So that I could do what? Get rid of the square, and I get x by itself. So this and this cancel each other out, so I'm left with x. And so what is x equal to? Square root of p. But it's a little bit more than that. Let's go back to this. Let's go back to the square root of 9. We said the square root of 9 is 3, correct? Because what number times itself is equal to 9? Well, 3 is. But there's something else as well. There's another number, not just 3, -3. Because what number times itself, the same two exact numbers, multiplied times itself, right, is equal to 9? Well, +3 times +3 is 9. But what other two numbers multiply together to be +9? A -3 and a -3. Would you agree? Because if I take -3 and square it, what's -3 times -3? +9. Okay? What's +3 squared? It's also 9. Okay? So when I take the square root, I actually get 2 values for it. I get a positive value, I get a negative value. Instead of writing it separately like this, here's how we write it a lot of times. We'll put a plus and a negative like right on top of each other. Everybody see that? You may have seen that before. You may not have seen that before. All right? But if you had Algebra 2, you should have seen this. But everybody comes from different backgrounds, so who knows? But that right there is what the square root of 9 is. Plus or minus, plus or minus 3. That's how we do it. Instead of writing it twice, a +3 and then comma, a -3, we just put plus or minus 3. So what do you think we're going to do here? If I took the square root of it, you're not just going to have a positive square root of p. You're going to have a what? A positive and a negative square root of p. I just showed you why. I just went through that whole explanation. Because the square root of 9 is a +3 and a -3. All right? You see that? So whatever this number is, if I take the square root of it, I'm going to get a positive version of it, and I'm going to get a negative version of it. That's why. That's why I went over here and did this off to the side to show you why you get a positive and a negative. Let's do another one. This is a little bit easier because they actually give you a number. They don't just put a variable here. So x squared equals 4. So we don't want the squared. How do we get rid of that squared?
Just put x. Cancel out. X is
What did we do? Look, what did we do? We did this. We did this. What did we do to it? What did we do to it? I'm trying to lead you down the path. I'm holding your hand, walking you down the path, and you just don't want to hold on, okay? That's right. I don't want to hug. I don't want to hug. My point is, I'm leading you. I'm showing you. Look, how did we get rid of this squared? We took the square root. How do we get rid of this? We took the square root. So how do we get rid of this squared right here? We take the square root, okay? What I mean is just follow along the pattern that I'm showing you here, okay? You did not say that. Okay, so here we go. So I take the square root of both sides. That square root and that squared cancel each other out, and I'm left with x. So what's the square root of 4? That's right. It's a positive and a negative 2. You get 2 answers for it. It looks like it's just one answer, but there's actually 2 answers. All right, you got a positive version and you got a negative version. Why did I put the negative there? Because negative 2 times negative 2 is what? Positive 4. So does a negative 2, if I put it in for x, does it work? Absolutely. Negative 2 times negative 2, or negative 2 squared, is positive 4. Okay? That's why I get a positive and a negative. I did square root it. I square rooted this and I square rooted this. Because the square root of 4 is a 2. I got it right here, right? I've got the square root right here. The square root of 4 is 2. That's why I don't keep it under a square root, right? The square root of p, I don't know what p is, so I don't know, I can't simplify it. So I have to keep it under a square root. What if I have this? Let's do another one. That actually wasn't even a official example. This is an official example. That was just to teach you how to do these things. This is an official example. Example 3a. So this one, it's kind of the same thing, but when I take the square root of it, it doesn't simplify like the square root of 4 did. The square root of 4 came out to a 2, right? Square root of 9 comes out to what? 3. The square root of 25 comes out to what? 5, okay? But if I take the square root of 5, does that come out to a nice even number? No, it's not. So watch. What do? I got to get rid of the square. So I take the square root of this side, and I take the square root of this side. But remember, see, these cancel out. Remember, it's not just a positive square root of 5. It's a what? It's a positive and a negative square root of 5. Don't write it as a decimal. Don't put it into a calculator. Just keep it the square root of 5. But you got to make sure you put the plus and the minus in front of it. We call this plus or minus 5. That's how, or square root of 5. That's how we would say it. Okay, x is equal to plus or minus square root of 5. Because either one of those works. The positive version works and the negative version works. Okay? Let's do another one. What if we had this? And we got to solve for x. All these say solve. I didn't write it down, but every one of these, it just says solve. All right? There's only one variable, so we know what to solve for. We know to solve for x. So what do? What do we get rid of? Do I add a 2 to both sides? No, because you got to get rid of this squared first. So how do we get rid of a square? We've done it like 3 or 4 times today already. Square root it. So you square root both sides. Okay? I'm just going to rewrite it again so I can do the square root. So watch. I square root this side and I what? Square root the other side. What does that square root do to this squared? That's right. It cancels out, so I'm left with just x minus 2. Now, what about this? Remember, if I square root it, I got to put a plus or minus out in front of it. So this is going to be plus or minus what? 4. Now, I'm not done, though. I got to do one more thing. What do I have to do? Yeah, what do I have to do? Give me a...
Have to do like x minus 2 equals negative 4.
Yeah, let's not do that just yet. Let's get x by itself. Let's get x by itself. Then we'll worry about the plus or minus thing over here. So what do we do first? Plus 2, right. Plus 2 to both sides, all right? Plus 2, plus 2. So watch what we get. That cancels, x equals. Now remember what this is. What is this? This is a positive 4, and it's a what? It's a negative 4. So what are we going to do? We're going to go 4 plus 2, right? And then we're going to go, no, we're not subtracting 2. We're taking negative 4 plus 2, right? It's not the same thing. 4 plus 2 and negative 4 plus 2 is not the same thing. And they said 4 minus 2. It's not 4 minus 2. And it's not negative 4 minus 2. It's negative 4 plus 2. You see that? Because what is plus or minus 4? It's a positive 4 and a negative 4. So there's my positive 4 plus 2, and there's my negative 4 plus 2. So I get 2 answers for this. I mean, I got 2 answers here, but we kind of combined it, made it look like one answer. But really, that's 2 answers. Same thing here. So what do I get? What's positive 4 plus 2? 6. Now I'll put a comma because we're going to get 2 answers. What's this right here? Negative 4 plus 2? Negative 2. So I get 2 answers. I get negative 6 and I get negative 2.
Wait, it's not negative.
Huh? Did I say negative 6? Sorry. I meant 6. I saw the negative and I must have said negative. So x is 6 and x is negative 2. Those are my 2 answers. Again, in the book, they're not going to write it like that. Do you remember how they write it in the book? They put this little bracket thingy, brace. I think they call it a brace. They usually put the smaller number first. So which one would go first? Negative 2, and then comma 6, close off the little brace. So this is the way the book will show the answer. I'm perfectly fine if you leave the answer like that. Okay, if you wanted to, you could say x is 6 and x is negative 2. You could write it like that as well. At this point, I don't really care, all right? Write it like this, or write it like that. I'm fine either way, but this is the way you'll see it in the book. So when you look in the back of the book, you'll probably see it like this. And that's basically it for the square root method. All right, it's called the square root method because we get rid of something that's being squared by taking the square root of it. All right, this is still a quadratic because you have a squared with it. And remember yesterday we got 2 answers for most of them. I think one of them got 1 answer. But most of the time you're going to get 2 answers. Same thing here, you get 2 answers. Plus or minus 2, isn't that 2 answers? Yeah. Okay, a positive 2 and a negative 2, that's 2 answers. Positive 3, negative 3. Positive square root of 5, negative square root of 5. Okay, positive 6, negative 2. You get 2 answers for almost all of these. And I can't say definitively all of them, but almost all of them, you'll get 2 answers. We good? And if you wanted, you could plug them in to see if it works. Like, how in the world can it possibly work to get 2 answers? Let's just do this. We'll finish up with this. So we said x is equal to 6, and we said that x is equal to negative 2, correct? Let's put it in here. Here's our original equation. Let's put it in there just to see if it actually works, okay? Put a 6 in there. 6 minus 2 is 4. Thank you. 4 squared is 16. Does 6 work? Yeah, it works. Put a negative 2 in for this. What's negative 2 minus 2? It's negative 4. What's negative 4 squared? It's a positive 16 because it's negative 4 times negative 4. And so that works too, doesn't it? Both of those answers actually make this thing work. It's always a good idea to check. Now, if you're a quiz or a test, there are situations, and we haven't hit them yet. Okay, we might hit them in a little bit. I'm not sure when. But there are situations where you're going to get maybe one of these answers don't work. If I plug it in, one of them does work and one of them doesn't work. All right, like how would I know if one works or one doesn't work? I got to plug it back in and I got to test it. All right, I got to see if they both work. So my recommendation to you is to make sure you take your answer, plug it back in, make sure that it works. If it doesn't, you may have done something wrong, or it may be one of those situations where only one of them works. All right? I don't want to get into that too much, but eventually you will have a situation where only one works. Sometimes you do the math correctly, perfectly, and neither one of them will work. You're like, well, what's up with that? Well, it just means there's no solution, and sometimes there's no solutions to these. Okay? Sometimes these don't always have an answer. All right? But this one does. All right, enough of that. Yeah. Okay, so I gave you your homework yesterday. Let me just write it down again in case you forgot. Did anybody actually do some of those problems from last night? Okay. How many problems were like the ones we did yesterday? Like only 3 of them? All right. So it's section 1, 2, and we'll call it A because there's more. We'll call it A. All right. This is our first homework on section 1, 2. We're going to have several of these, I believe, homeworks from section 1, 2. But it's pages 106 and 107. And we're doing 9 to 33, the odds. Yes. All right. So that's your homework. Some of you may have finished some of these already, so you just have a handful to do. Some of you, you're going to have to do all of them because you didn't try any last night. All right. So there you go. 9 to 33, just the odds. And you should be able to do all of them right now. Okay.